Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to talk about the Intolerable Acts and the Continental Congress. So, right now, what I need you to do is in your early rebellion notes, I need you to add two text boxes for the first and second Continental Congresses. And to do that, you are going to follow the directions on the next slide. Okay, so to insert a text box into your early rebellion notes, scroll down till you see the Intolerable Acts. Click in the text box right there, hit tab, name it First Continental Congress. What was the purpose of it? Okay. And what did it accomplish? Then click in the text box here. I should probably spell that right. Tab, Second Continental Congress. And I'm just going to copy and paste the same ones. There. There you go. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the Intolerable Acts. Those were actually called the Coercive Acts in England. They were trying to get them to follow these laws and have the colonists obey the British government. So it was actually 5 separate laws that were passed. One of them closed the Boston Harbor to all imports and exports until the city paid for the tea that they ruined and that the ones that they threw into Boston Harbor. So by closing Boston Harbor, the colonists could not get goods shipped into the colonies, and they could not export, meaning they could not make money from the product that they were exporting. The second one gave colonial powers that were in the hands of the individual colonies governments or colonial governments to the governors. So people could no longer elect their government officials in some of the colonies. Then, if there was a government official who was charged with a capital crime in the colonies, the British government moved that trial to Great Britain, meaning it was a lot harder to convict those government officials in Great Britain. One, because they couldn't get people who were testifying against those officials to Great Britain, and also the people who were the jurors and the people who were the magistrates, the judges, they were more lenient to those government officials because they were acting on behalf of the British government. All right, the next one is the Quartering Act. And this was one that's really going to stick with the colonists, and that's our Third Amendment. They specifically put this in here and then put that in our Bill of Rights and in our Constitution as a direct response to this Quartering Act. And this forced colonists to provide housing for soldiers. So either building the housing or the soldiers could just come into colonist homes and stay there. And they had to provide a bed, they had to provide food. And the colonists did not like this. Then the last one, they took the Ohio Valley for the government, meaning colonists could not move into the Ohio Valley, the thing that they won from the French and Indian War. The colonists could not move and claim land out there. They took it solely for the British government. So, did the Intolerable or Coercive Acts work? No. The colonists were mostly united in their anger against the British government. I say mostly because there were still people who were considered loyal to the British government even after this, and they saw that the British government had the power to do that. So when I say the colonists were angry, I mean some, not all, or most. Okay. So they were mostly united in their anger against the British government, and this pushed the colonies one step closer to rebellion. And the colonies called for the first Continental Congress. Okay, so the first Continental Congress, as a direct result of the colonists' anger towards the Intolerable Acts, as well as the Stamp Act, Sugar Act, those laws that were passed without consent of the colonies, right? So all 13 colonies sent delegates to Philadelphia for the first Continental Congress. So the delegates wrote a letter, essentially, to King George III asking for the king to repeal the Intolerable Acts. It was a formal complaint, right? It was like a bad Yelp review. So the colonies said that if the king did not repeal the acts or take them away, the colonies would boycott British goods that were imported to the colonies, meaning the companies that were bringing goods to the colonists, they weren't being bought and they were not making money. And King George did not repeal the Intolerable Acts. He was angry at the colonists. How dare they defy me and go against my government? So after a while, the delegates got back together for the Second Continental Congress because the king didn't repeal the acts. And it accomplished a lot in the several years that it met. And it met on and off. So first, they created the Continental Army. And this was a united front against the British troops. All of the colonists were united together, or colonies were united together against the British. And they decided if they had to take action, they needed to have their own troops or militia. They again tried to get the acts repealed, and the king said no. It was this thing called the Olive Branch Treaty or petition, and basically King George didn't even bother looking at it. He wanted nothing to do with it. He was so fed up. Tension was high in the colonies. And finally, the Continental Congress decided that's it. They're not meeting our demands. They aren't listening to us. We do not feel like actual members of the British realm, of the British country, and the king can no longer tell us what to do. So they signed the Declaration of Independence. And that was the biggest step that the Continental Congress took. So I cannot underestimate how big of a deal the Declaration of Independence is. So they are signing their names to a document and declaring that they are no longer part of a British government. And they were literally risking their lives for this to happen. And this chance could cost them their lives. If they succeeded, great. They had their own country. They were no longer part of Britain. If they didn't and they lost, they would be considered traitors, and the sentence for that is death. So they were literally risking their lives for this. All right, so I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger. And that's all for today. Next time we are going to look at the Declaration of Independence. What did they want? What did they accomplish from it? All right, see you guys later.